So, welcome everybody to the third session of our symposium. So we just in Hong Kong had our lunch break and we resume. I don't know from where you are joining. So this session will focus on cities and health and as one of the sub-themes, governmental and institutional roles in building resilient communities. And we invited three speakers and one moderator. And let me just introduce our moderator. And from then on, she will further guide through the session. So as moderator, we invited Corinne Chan. Corinne is currently the Vice President of the Hong Kong Institute of Architects. She's also a distinguished architect and very active in various roles in the community. So basically bridging also various roles of institutional, professional, and working with a range of stakeholders here in Hong Kong. So I would say without further ado, Corinne, it's your floor.
Thank you, Hendrik. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session. The topic of this session is cities and health, government and institutional roles in building resilient communities. And this is actually a topic I'm very interested in. And if not even without invitation, I would love to hear from the three eminent speakers on this topic, which is really important in the post-COVID-19. I'm Corinne, representing the Hong Kong Institute of Architects. And first of all, I really want to thank Hendrik and the whole team for building up this event and also this connection for all of us. You have been doing it not just now, but have been doing it for months, accumulating the momentum. I really want to thank you for making this effort, not just for us, for the city, but really for the world, connecting people from all over the world. And the three speakers at this session are Professor Ng Mi Kam from Hong Kong, and Professor Kan Mi Jae from Taiwan, and also Ridwan from Malaysia. And now we are at the Zoom, conference, and this has not been a norm. But because of COVID-19, we are in a new norm, and it brings forth a lot of changes, already in us. It came this year, 2020, early this year, really unexpected. Hong Kong has experienced SARS before, and it ended, it ended in a few months. But this time, COVID-19 is the impact is much deeper, wider, and longer. It affects everybody on this planet. To me, this COVID-19 is like a wake-up call. Make everybody stop, really think and reflect, and understand and realize what's really important to us as a human race, and stop and really think what's important and what's next. What kind of cities, what kind of world that we are building. So I really see that COVID-19, yes, it has brought out the loss of lives and the hurt in the economy, and but at the same time, it really brings out new possibilities. And for us, I'm from the Institute of Architects. For us, the professionals, like this topic is about the government and also the institutions. We have been also rethinking as architects, planners, landscape architects, what professional institutes, can help. What roles can we take to help? And also what the government can also help after this COVID-19 to build a healthy city that is resilient, inclusive, brings happiness and well-being to individuals and also communities. I think this is a great opportunity. And if we have lost this opportunity, it will be a great regret. And I'm happy that we have gathered the minds of people from all over the world to really gather our insights and see how we can move forward. And in terms of government and institutions, the case of Hong Kong is very interesting. We have gone through a very challenging time in 2019, and the trusting relationship between community and the government really needs to be worked on. And exactly why I want to introduce Mikam, Professor M first, to talk about this from her perspective. And before Mikam start her sharing, I want to introduce her to all of you. She is the Associate Director of Institute of Future Cities, Chinese University of Hong Kong. She's also the Vice Chairman of the Department of Geography and Resource Management and Director of the Urban Studies Program. And Mikam has been promoting community planning for many years. And I know that she said it's not her dream has not been realized yet, but I think because of COVID, it brings out the awareness of people and the community. And she is already starting doing some very inspiring work, you know, in the community. She set up a group called Community Living Room. Yes, and yes, with Corinne together. So, but I give the time to Mikam right now for your sharing.
Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Corinne, and thanks Hendrik and the organizers to invite me to share today. And I have to say that I'm not going to talk about Hong Kong, not much to talk about Hong Kong in terms of building resilient communities. Not yet, we're trying to be more resilient. I tried to be more, in a sense, laying out the whole discussion. I understand that we'll have two wonderful cases coming up by Min Jing and also Ridwan and later on. So what I want to do is that we'll go through some of the key words that Hendrik asked me to talk about, and then we'll look at what kind of roles the government and institutions can actually work on if we really want to build resilient communities, in face of pandemics. Just now Corinne mentioned about post-COVID-19. I'm not sure we are post yet. I think we're still very much into it. But if we have that opportunity of going beyond COVID-19, I think really, like what Corinne has mentioned, we really need to consider carefully how to build communities that are resilient. Now, I don't know whether you know about the fact that ever since 2008, half of the world's population have been living in urban areas, and by 2050, 66% of the world's population will live in urban areas. So that translates into, an increase of 2.4 billion urban dwellers. So in other words, if you think about it, by 2050, we have to build, if we're talking about, 1 million city, we have to build 2,400 1 million cities. So that's a huge number of cities. And if you think about, if we look at the world and it's in cities, which we have to sometimes do this very severe lockdown in order to stop, COVID-19. So health becomes a very important issue for cities. And according to the World Health Organization, health is not just not having disease. It doesn't mean that if we don't have COVID-19, then we are healthy. Health actually, like what WHO has defined, is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So this is a very tall order. And according to the WHO, this is a fundamental, right for each and every one of us, for every human being. So if health is this fundamental right for you and me, when you have a right, then, you know, someone will have the duty of providing, you know, this right, of satisfying this right. And that's why, you know, government and institutions become very important. And when we think about institutions, you know, it's not just about hard institution, but also what we call soft institution, you know, like our culture, our daily norms, you know, etc. So when we think about health, I don't know how many of you, probably you guys know about SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and you can classify the 17 Sustainable Development Goals into, you know, healthy planet, healthy people, healthy economy, and also healthy collaboration and peaceful collaboration. So, and among this, SDG 3 is good health and well-being. Now, when we think about health, especially if you remember WHO's definition, which is physical, mental, and social health, then, you know, this diagram actually illustrates how important it is when we want to promote good health and well-being, like in SDG 3, that is actually related to the rest of the 16 goals. And it's so important to always prioritize, you know, health, especially the health needs of the poor people, how to sort of like, you know, address the causes and also the consequences of all forms of malnutrition. So zero hunger is not just, you know, filling your stomach, but filling your stomach with good food, etc. So it requires the collaboration of all these various aspects, right? Understanding that unless we have a healthy environment, a healthy planet, where you have healthy, you know, life underwater and on land, when we don't waste resources, that we use resources, you know, in a responsible manner, that we also use clean energy, we also have, you know, clean water, then, you know, when we have a healthy environment, we'll have healthy animals, then we'll have healthy human beings. That is very important. And also another aspect, especially about social health and psychological health, has to do with people and prosperity. So how can people have this access to basic needs, to education, to equity? These are very important, or to jobs, you know, so that they can have dignity, to innovations that prioritize, you know, needs and not just for making money, to, you know, an institution that is, will reduce, you know, inequities, and also, you know, the importance of building sustainable communities and cities. So another way of looking at it is that you can't have health without collaboration of different policy sectors. Okay, so here it's related to transport, to housing, to work, to nutrition, or even to water and sanitation. Or this diagram shows us how, you know, how can you promote health in these various aspects, right? When you treat waste management, first of all, can you get rid of the concept of waste in the longer run? I'm from the Institute of Future Cities. That is very important. How can we have, you know, planning and design, you know, that can ensure the building of healthy buildings with, you know, building codes which will ensure, you know, better ventilation, better, you know, sunlight, and also better sort of quality materials in our construction of the buildings. How can the health sector work together with the built environment so that people will not just have physical health, but they will also have this opportunity to come together as a community, to work together, also clean energy, providing housing, mobility, transportation, accessibility, and also dealing with, you know, industries. Instead of polluting industry, we're using industry to promote, you know, better work styles and allowing people to have a healthier, you know, lifestyle, etc. So these tell us that it's very important for, you know, for cities to really integrate these various policy areas in order to provide a healthy city. Now, the sort of another concept, you know, in this title is about resilience. And there are different understandings of resilience. The most normal one is, you know, this engineering engineering understanding, which is resilient is just going back to normal, you know. So I heard many times, you know, people say, oh, we don't know when we can go back to normal, right? Sometimes I wonder, you know, people really understand what they are saying. I mean, like Corinne mentioned, COVID-19 is actually a wake-up call. I mean, it's our so-called normal, which has contributed to the outbreak of this pandemic. I mean, what is the meaning of going back to normal? Okay, but anyway, so there's another definition of resilience. It's called ecological resilience, which, you know, is more flexible if you like. So if somehow one equilibrium is disturbed and you have to move on to another state where you can also sort of like attain stability, okay, that you can also accept. You don't need to go back to quote unquote normal, okay? So that is an ecological definition. But actually in the literature, there is another definition which is called social resilience. Social resilience is transformative. It's this idea that you can actually, through this crisis, instead of being defeated by the crisis, if you are truly resilient, that you can actually thrive, you know, in the process. So in other words, we do have these two, you know, like two extreme, if you like. You know, one is the recovery understanding of resilience. That means you just want to go back to the previous, you know, state, as you know, state of stability. But then another one is more transformative. You can argue that it's a cultural geography definition, which try to sort of like look at, you know, how cultures, individuals, and societies are responding to changes. And the idea is that when you change, you know, you're not changing back to so-called normal, or you just accept, you know, another level of stability, but rather you do it purposefully, so that in a way you are actually bringing the society through the crisis to a better state, to a more just, you know, society, to a society that is actually better, you know, socially, economically, and environmentally more sustainable in a way. If you want, you know, that is a true resilient community, if you can really do it, okay? So, but of course that process encompasses many things. It depends on the community's capacity to learn, to innovate, to renew, and to reorganize, and also to sort of like, you know, trust that we can actually pursue a more sustainable pathway. Okay, so I define all the terms in the title that's given to us by the organizer. Now, according to WHO, in its 17th anniversary publication back in 2018, it sort of is a very good publication. You know, if you're interested in this pandemic, I would strongly recommend you to read it. It argued that the communities, we're talking about resilient communities. Communities are very important. They are the major actors in preventing, identifying, responding, and recovering from the physical, psychological, social, and economic impacts of epidemics. So communities are central, you know, to, of course, to this fight against the pandemic, and also to really truly build, you know, a more sustainable community. So according to their publication, you know, community can play different roles at different point of time. And this is a sort of like a situation when you have a pandemic. Very often, you know, we experienced it, right? Before the pandemic, you can call it pre-pandemic intervals. You know, so you might heard about, oh, there's something bad happened elsewhere. And then through investigation, recognition, then you enter into the pandemic interval with initiation, acceleration, and then hopefully we will be in this phase very quickly, deceleration, and then, you know, you will have preparation for the next pandemic, just like in Hong Kong, because of SARS. The government put together, you know, an emergency plan, and that's why this time I think Hong Kong is one among many other places, you know, which has handled the pandemic, you know, reasonably well. Except, you know, certain waves, right? So that's another way of putting it. Pandemic phrases. So you have the pathogen, and then it's local transmission to, global one, and then hopefully we'll have reduced, transmission and the cycle repeats again. Now, according to WHO's publication, the community in this kind of situation plays a very important role because unless the community coordinates, and they also have very effective ways of transmitting information and communicating the risk, right? It's very difficult for the government or the medical profession to intervene in the whole situation. So in other words, in order to have effective community engagement, we need to build this knowledge base in the community. But before you do it, unless you have trust in the community, and trust cannot be built in one day. So you need to have sort of like a long-term plan to really slowly develop this kind of mutual support to allow people to come together. And trust is very important. Otherwise knowledge cannot really be spread. I don't know whether you heard about these terms, which is called infodemics. In other words, it's not just pandemic, you've got information pandemic as well. So you have fake news everywhere. And unless you have, trust among the community members, it's very easy for panic, news to be spread and destabilize the neighborhood. And self-efficacy is also very important. And that's why we need to nurture communities, prepare the community before, the crisis strike. So that's why I put this together in this table and try to sort of, focus on this and talk about what constitutes a resilient, community. And also what role the government and institutions can play. Now we have, so we can say that we can have these three key phases, right? Inter-pandemic phase or pre-pandemic, if you like, and then pandemic alert, and then pandemic. All right. Now for pandemic alert and also pandemic, we are into it. We had experienced it, and we understand that the kind of things that we can do similar all over the world, right? So you need to be clean. You need to practice social distancing and social gathering ban, and also maybe quarantine. And we need facilities to treat people, closing the schools, or like we do this Zoom meeting rather than meeting face-to-face, and also canceling big events or even like locking down cities, etc. But as I've said, if we can go through this saga, then we really need to be very careful and think about what we can do so that our community can be better prepared for the next pandemic. And I can identify, all these factors, which include ecological urbanism. Like, I think I have emphasized, this enough. Unless we have healthy environments and healthy animal, we cannot have healthy human being. It's time really for us to rethink about, what kind of cities we want to build. Remember, we have to build 2,400, 1 million cities, to accommodate the growing urban population by 2050. This is a huge challenge for us. And when we build these cities, how can we include food safety, sanitary environment, education, mutual help, local economy, allowing people to have minimum living space. This is very important, especially in a cramped city like Hong Kong, and also plan about the public space and information flow. Now these aspects are related to the sustainable development goals that we mentioned, and I understand I don't know the time, but I will speed up. I probably use up most of my time. So ecological urbanism is very important. How can we, when we build new cities, we really have to respect and understand the ecological systems and build according to certain basic rules, which probably need another webinar to talk about, but I think that is very important for us to build cities where you have a better relationship between the built environment and the natural environments, where you can see you can be in touch with nature, with one another, and also with healthy animals. And also another very important thing that the government can do is housing design, and also making sure that we have per capita living space is reasonable, is livable, so that you know, especially if we have to lock down cities, and how can people stay at home, you know, and can still through technology get connected to the world. Okay, that's very important. Another aspect which I think you know, we learn a big lesson, especially in case of Hong Kong, is that because of our living quarters are usually very tiny, very small, very packed, and so how can we sort of like really provide better public spaces and then plan the public spaces when, just in case, if we are unfortunate, another pandemic comes along, how can we use these spaces better, especially for those whose internal living environment is not very desirable. And in any case, if we allow people to join in, you know, making public spaces, like, you know, you can see these photographs, you know, they can provide local food, they can use this, you know, for developing local economy, local markets, and it's through these processes that they learn about how to sort of like keep the place clean and sanitary. It's a huge education processes, capacity building as well, and it's through this process people build up that trust, right, and knowledge about one another, and it's through this that maybe the government therefore can talk and organize these people and think about, like, just in case the next pandemic comes, where can we put the clinic, where can we do quarantine, you know, facilities. You have to do, you know, this kind of planning in a peaceful situation, you know, and otherwise, like now, sometimes we do it in the midst of a crisis. People just object because people don't understand and people don't have the trust. And these are very important. All right, this is my last slide. So these three aspects, if you translate this into the roles for government and institutions under the new urban agenda, you can you know, see that the government has a lot of roles to play, like, you know, planning strategies and policies at different geographical levels, maintaining, you know, pursuing an urbanism that really, you know, maintain ecosystem services and biodiversity, that requires legal and regulatory frameworks and also financing framework, providing affordable housing and building costs to allow people to have a minimum amount of living space that is allowing people to live with dignity, and also providing affordable housing finance products. And for us, the soft institutions, in a sense, you know, we need to realize, we as citizens, the importance of local space and how, you know, we should use it for building community, building local economy, making sure these spaces are climate proof, and realizing that that process is a capacity building process, which will allow us to, you know, develop various kind of, you know, evidence and maybe practical guidelines for maintaining these public spaces. And hopefully, if the next round of pandemic hits, we can actually ride on the technology and practice a kind of digital governance. So sorry, I must have overrun. Thanks for your listening.
Thank you, Mikam. You need another session because you're giving us like a framework, but in terms of details and implementation, it actually varies from city to city. But there are several words that are really impressive to me in your sharing is trust, and also communities, the strength from the community, and also the commitment from the government. And without the bottom up and the top down policy, cannot be successful. So this collaboration between us, the community, the civilians, with the government, with the professionals, and also now, pandemic tells us that this collaboration actually goes to the world. And we can also learn from each other how we are facing, you know, these challenges, and how we use different ways of going towards the same direction. And it's good that now we have Min Jae, Professor Khan from Taiwan, to share with us their experience. And especially Professor Khan, he has been not just within the academics, but it actually he applies his theory, you know, into reality. So he has ample of experience of building up communities. Like Mikem said, communities cannot be built up right away, but it needs to be a continuous process. And I know Professor Khan has been doing it all these years. And I give a little bit introduction of Professor Khan to all of you. He's the Associate Professor of Graduate Institute of Building and Planning, National Taiwan University. And he's also the current supervisor of a group called OURS, OURS. The long term is Organization of Urban Rest. So what does this rest mean? Revolution or regeneration? I will leave it to Professor Khan. He's also the director of Urban Settlements and Landscape Research Lab in NTU, and his researchers focus on these areas: urban design, urban conservation, and regeneration, social housing and co-housing, socially engaged public arts, cultural landscapes, and urban ecotones. I'm very interested in the last one. So, Professor, your spectrum is so wide. It covers housing, art, culture, landscape, architecture, urban design, almost everything. So I pass this time to you, Professor Khan, for your sharing. How government and institutions can help to build resilient communities. Professor Khan, yes.
Okay, thank you, Corinne. Am I clear? Because my connection seems very unstable.
It's very clear, Professor.
Okay.
Yes.
Sometimes I got some strange echo. Okay, because my time is very limited, I'm a bit anxious. So thank you for your introduction, and thank Mikem for building up this very interesting theoretical framework, so I don't have to be as theoretical. So I'm trying to be almost like a storyteller. Okay, I'm trying to put up my screen share. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about a very specific community in Taipei, and this is actually based on a paper that I submitted to the Journal of Public Space. So let me start with a few headline news in the past weeks in all over the world. And you know, Taiwan was noticed again for a record of 200 days with no local COVID-19 cases. And they reported and they observed and they analyzed and they asked a very simple question: how did Taiwan actually did it? But I think they both, it sort of boils down to a few observations. Okay, let me be brief. Border control and transparent information, contact tracing and strict quarantine. And I'm gonna focus on the third aspect about face mask production and distribution, and also lessons from the SARS experiences. But I think there is certain undetected infrastructure in Taiwan that I would try to explore in this paper. Oops, sorry. Okay, the first one is the administrative infrastructure of community empowerment and services in Taiwan. And you can see on the left side of the screen, it's sort of represent the bottom-up process for a community to be able to negotiate with the top-down policies by the government. And so there's certain interesting setup here. What we call a community in Taiwan, very often you also know it's a neighborhood. And there's like two different systems. One, through this Department of Social Affairs, you have very often a community development association. And the responsibility of this association is the delivery of social services and social welfare. And the other system here is through this Department of Civil Affairs. And then we have a very interesting character called Li Zhang, the neighborhood chief. And so the office of this neighborhood chief is responsible for all sorts of public services. And they all under this municipal government. So the other aspect here is this sort of interesting aspect of community empowerment projects. And this is a different system. Normally, you will find it through the Department of Urban Development, like the one in Taipei, or sometimes through the Department of Cultural Affairs. And if you have certain community empowerment projects in a very distinctive neighborhood, sometimes you can also work with the other two systems. Normally, you will find external social groups intervene in this sort of empowerment projects. And I'm trying to build a bridge between this top-down policies and bottom-up initiatives. And the other infrastructure that I think interesting is this very widespread of pharmacies in Taiwan. And in this COVID-19 case, through rationing system and national healthcare insurance, also about this accessible pharmacies and convenience stores where you can actually get a mask very easily in Taiwan. So you will look at this map of Taipei and the distribution of the population. And this map indicates all the pharmacies embedded in the communities. And then on the right-hand side, you will see the mask numbers supplied for an individual every 14 days. You get actually 9 masks every 14 days. And especially in the beginning, it's kind of chaos. But later on, it worked smoothly. And if we take a close up, here, the red, the circles indicates the pharmacies, and the triangular shape indicates convenience stores. Very often, you will find there's like queuing lines in front of the pharmacies, and then somehow you could get another pharmacies nearby to buy the mask, or you could find online through this convenience stores, on-demand outlets, and sometimes you can even get masks from vending machines. And this is really, I'm sorry. Okay, this is actually very important during April to May, because people are very anxious about getting masks. Through this, what we can call infodemic, you know, there's all sorts of information, and they need to buy masks. But here, people also establish some apps for mask map. This one is a very interesting one. In this mask map, you will see all sorts of different pharmacies in particular neighborhoods. And the red one indicates there's a certain shortage of mask supply. But what I'm trying to say here is a neighborhood is actually a wide region in Taipei that I'm heavily involved now. It's called Shezi Island, Shezi Dao. More than 11,000 inhabitants live in this island, but without a single pharmacy or convenience store. So actually, if you look at the map here, there's a hint of spatial and social exclusion. Where are the people, especially they are mostly elders and underprivileged citizens, where can they get masks? This is a very crucial question. And I was very nervous back then, because if there's one local infected case in Shezidao, the government might use that as an excuse to wipe out this whole community under the plan of zonal expropriation. It's a very strange system. I probably don't have time to explain right now, but I'm trying to compare this situation with another neighborhood called South Airport Apartments. I'm gonna focus on this particular neighborhood. This is another underprivileged community in Taipei, and it was hit the hardest during SARS. Actually, it accommodates the last SARS patient in Taipei. And it's a very interesting story. If I have time, I'll tell you later. Again, you can see even in this neighborhood, it's still very easy to find pharmacies like within 5-minute walk. So what is South Airport Apartments? This is an aerial map. If you travel to the southern part of Taipei in the Wanhua district, you will find a very large park called Youth Park, which used to be an airport. It was totally underused. So later on, it became a municipal park surrounded with public housing clusters. And South Airport Apartments indicate the first phase of this public housing cluster. And this is also the first modernist housing projects in Taiwan. And when they were built in 1950s, it looks very clean and very ordered. They have distinctive characteristics of a modernist housing. And this is on the left-hand side, this is the first phase. This is the second phase of South Airport Apartments. But if you compare to the current situation, it looks totally different. You probably cannot even recognize what it used to be like. I think Hong Kong is probably familiar with a scene like this. But in Taipei, someone would call this is like a little Hong Kong. Okay. This is the spatial layout for the 3 phases of South Airport Apartments. In the first phase, it accommodates 1,264 units, and second phase 580, and the third phase 264. And they are under the pressure of urban renewal. And so you look at this Zhongyi Elementary School, the government actually would tear down this elementary school for a transitional housing for new social housing. But according to the story that you will hear later, this project was actually negotiated by the neighborhood to stop the action. Okay, so let me take you through a quick tour here. This is the first phase of South Airport Apartment. Please ignore the Chinese characters. But the very interesting feature here is the flying spiral staircases. It's very recognizable, and it's also iconic. And the second phase and third phase is like the courtyard blocks. And you see this picture of neighborhood chief Fang Hesheng. If you remember the civil affairs system, you will know this character is very crucial in this neighborhood. But he's also the board director of Community Development Association. So it means an individual could actually play dual roles from social welfare program to public services. And this picture will show you the transitional spaces between private sphere and public domain, especially in the second and third phase. And there's quite a lot of appropriation of public spaces. And there is a very famous night market in South Airport Apartments. So it's interesting, but also chaotic. If you look at the statistic here, there's high concentration of underprivileged citizens in this neighborhood. Low income, elderly, and economically disadvantaged, physically disabled, socially disadvantaged. And they all live in very small units. Each one of them is about 26 square meters. And the whole environment is poorly maintained. But I also want to mention that if you look at the statistics in the community elementary school, 70% of them are from the least advantaged families. So after this SARS attack, this neighborhood chief started a line of community empowerment projects and social innovation. I wanted to sort of briefly introduce some of them to you. Here, if you look at this interesting map, there are certain sort of services catered directly by this neighborhood chief. And then he also innovated a certain social program to help the elders intermingle with the younger generation. So they play wiser ball. Actually, it became a very famous team in Taiwan. They even traveled abroad to compete. And this team is composed of different age groups. And this is a very interesting video, but we don't have time to show that. It's about the happiness meal delivery program initiated again by this neighborhood chief. This one here, Mr. Fang Hesheng. A lot of volunteers participated in this meal delivery. They send meal to the elderly household to check on them day by day, meal by meal, to make sure they are okay. But later on, they think probably they should get together and eat together. So they started a different program called co-dining, senior co-dining, and they established a very interesting community kitchen in a defunct building. And in this building, what they call LOHAS, lifestyle of health and sustainability, they call this place LOHAS Land. They upcycled a neighborhood defunct building to accommodate junior coffee master program. They are the dropouts from junior high schools. And they also experiment what they call King of Readership, city library branch. And normally it's very unlikely for any city library branch to be located directly in the neighborhood. And they also have exercise plaza and after school care. So in this interesting LOHAS land, they accommodate different age groups to interact on daily basis. And also he helped this junior coffee master to open a cafe called Wajia Cafe. They are now certified by a program from London. They even built this counter here to be able to be compatible with the London standard. And again, Mr. Fang Hesheng, he tried to exploit different resources. And so he is also tried the social entrepreneur program. And now they have a sharing refrigerator right in front of this cafe. And they use high-tech sort of facial identification program. So people could get food here every day. And they are recycled food from different resources. And so they started, again, this interesting food bank. And I'm gonna show you here. This is a food bank passbook. Every neighborhood member can actually get one passbook, but he can either be a community volunteer or he or she might be at a disadvantage, elderly or one of the household members. And so through donation of food and materials, like from Carrefour, and a lot of interesting resources, he's an excellent fundraiser, okay? And they built this food bank as a supplies and distribution platform. A lot of volunteer work in this food bank office, and it's also an exhibit for different food. And then they use community currency system. Volunteers here could actually get food because of different tasks like meal delivery or household care, community management or community patrol, cleaning. And then more and more people join this program. This is a statistic showing in the year of 2017 and the growth of members, in 2018. And this office is also another adaptation of an obsolete post office into a community food bank. And I'm trying to, again, be a bit theoretical to use the definition of Edgar to talk about social resilience as the ability of community to withstand external shocks to their social infrastructure, and it responds efficiently to the top-down policy impacts like urban renewals and environmental changes through coping capacities, adapting capacities, and transformative capacities. So structurally, in this particular case of SAA, it demonstrates the administrative infrastructure that facilitates the building of a resilient community. But it also shows the social spatial infrastructure of the healthcare system and community empowerment. I'm going to show the last slide. So this Li Zhang, this neighborhood chief, Mr. Fang, he actually made a full roster of more than 300 senior members of the co-dining program in Lohas land after the outbreak of COVID-19. Regarding their travel and contact histories, religious activities, Lunar New Year gathering, and so on in early February. And he would take the elders to the hospital in person for routine chronic disease checkup and other emergencies. So he told me that at certain days, I went in and out of hospital 5 times a day, not because I was ill, because he took the elderly to the hospital, and he would also give them a new mask after they left the hospital. And so he called himself, I'm SAA CDC. He's kind of proud of this. But I also have certain reflection after my interview with him after the outbreak, because people are interested in finding out if this community could survive another epidemic attack. And he was very proud of what they did in this pandemic, because no one was ill due to the pandemic. Somehow, I have a struggle, a different sort of sense of feeling here when I heard about how he was confident in this sort of community building process, because this community relies on almost a singular social entrepreneur who almost self-build the social programs of a resilient community. I mean, it is not the only one in Taiwan, but it's also kind of rare. Very few leaders could actually fundraise and initiate social innovation in a neighborhood like this, like Mr. Fang. And SAA was still a highly vulnerable community during the pandemic outbreak. But Mr. Fang insisted that social interactions is more important than social distancing because of his confidence in the status quo of the community. So I'm a bit ambivalent when I was talking to him, but I think he made a few interesting remarks. If there is a lockdown in this community and the elderly couldn't get out to meet their friends and their peers, or and their dining partners, somehow they could be sick because of that. That's Mr. Fang's argument. So I'm thinking, because of this community building capacity in Taiwan, especially after the martial law was lifted, and this process of democratization in Taiwan helps the bottom-up process to be able to negotiate with the top-down governmental measures. So I think Mr. Fang brought in another aspect about social entrepreneurship. So if you combine these different roles, different actors, probably it's also very helpful to build a resilient community and to better social resilience in the future. Well, that's my talk today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you. And it's good to have MeCamp's overall, framework, and then with Professor sharing with us a special case, a case in Taiwan. I have a lot of questions, and because the topic is how government and also institutions, can play the role to build the resilient communities. But actually, this example tells us that only one man, one single man, not any institution or grant support from the government, and he can already build, this community. And I think the question will be the sustainability.
Exactly. He was actually recently awarded the presidential medal.
Yes,
of all community leaders. Yes. Okay.
Yes. And I think this is an inspiration, and this will inspire many other leaders, to come up, and that will be sustainability. Instead of relying on one person, but every one of us can be Mr. This Li Jiang. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit not good in time control because the sharing.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Our session has special allowance because the next one will have a bigger gap. And I would like to take this time to present to all of you our third speaker. He's from Malaysia. He is Ridwan Nizam, and actually a young planner. I'm very inspired to see young professionals are taking leads in shaping and changing our city. And Ridwan is a senior place-making executive of Think City, Malaysia. And I have heard of the name Think City, so many times from different professionals like planners, and I'm very curious to hear from Ridwan their story, how the Think City actually has reshaped, the cities in Malaysia. And Ridwan, he specialized in culture-based planning, and he has been part of the Think City KL team since 2015. His experience also spans across a wide spectrum, from management, program management of grants, youth engagements, baseline studies, capacity building, policy review, cultural and heritage conservation. And very important, he acts as a key liaison, the connector between Think City and government agencies, professional agencies, and local universities. So he really works as a binder and also a connector between these different bodies. And I would really love to hear from Ridwan. Ridwan, your time, yes, to share with us.
Thank you, Corinne, for the.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Okay, thank you, Corinne, for the nice introduction, and also to the Mikam and Minjay for the sharing the story and case study from different side of the place. So to begin, today I will share with you the governmental and about the topic, but from the Think City perspective. And to begin, I would like to introduce a bit about Think City. Think City, we are a social purpose organization driven by impact in Malaysia. Our vision is we want to make cities people friendly by and resilient. First, by catalyze the changes by the way city has planned. Second, how the city have been created, developed, and also celebrated. We're looking at the whole system on how to build the city. And Think City, we have been our operation. We have 4 main teams. placemaking team, resilient, analytic, and conservation. This kind of communities of practice that we have in Think City is based on our knowledge that we have been started about 10 years ago. And the unique about Think City, when we do any project, is first we are not just think but also do think, where we involve from project in the highest policy level up until the implementation of the landway, for example. And also our operation when we deliver the project is based on evidence, where we do a lot of demonstrative projects to actually test it, the idea whether it's work. Because when we try to adapt the idea from other place, for example, each place is unique, right? So we need to see how the idea fit into the certain context of the place. And third one is Think City. We are always sitting in a neutral platform in between the government, private, and public, and also good support from the international agency. This is one of the unique feature that Think City have when we deliver the project. We are kind of like interconnector and facilitator between a diverse sector in a city scenes. We are started in 2009 as a grants provider, and then after success in Georgetown, the government believed that this initiative should be expanded to the other city like Kuala Lumpur, Johor Bahru, and Butterworth. And after that, on 2018, we have decided to expand towards the Southeast Asia, looking beyond the as a city making agency and urban delivery partner. To begin with, Georgetown, it is actually a historical and important city, but it start lose its purpose when the status of free port status have been lost. But in 2008, the Georgetown have been listed by UNESCO as the World Heritage Site. The area that the red line here is where the Georgetown World Heritage Site Lab is situated. The government have provide funding to restore this area, because many of part in this city have been static in decay and neglect. So it will affect the World Heritage status that just received by the Georgetown. So this is where the Think City journey began actually in 2009. The mission is simple. We use a small grant or project to catalyze the regeneration of the inner city in Georgetown. We believe that by improve the livability of the place, it will help to drive the economic transformations. This is just example of how we do the shop house that have been abandoned. We have 7 here, and then we give the grants to restore the facades, and then it's become a nice boutique hotel where it's combined all 7 terrace shop house as a one boutique building. And then this is how we help not just provide the grants, but also how we negotiate with the owner and tenant. For the tenant after the restore, they were able to stay in a longer period rather than being kicked out after the building has been restored. And then this is the building have been here in the 1889, and now it's become a very high class and very nice bar and restaurants. This is one of the fountain. When we restore, we not just restore the fountain, but also looking at the context of the surrounding to complement with the heritage building and also the landscaping to ensure it have a symbiosis relationship as a place. Besides looking at the building, we also works a lot with the community. For example, this is the Clan House, with the grant to improve the landscape, and also looking at the mosque, which have been there by since Georgetown is started. We help to restore the dome of this mosque, and also a lot of programming to ensure the soul of this place is become active. Besides giving the grants to the tangible heritage, we also give a lot of grant to ensure we have the programming in terms of looking at the culture mapping, intangible heritage, to safeguard and to ensure this kind of asset and culture could be safeguarded and documented properly. We also have give a grant to the Butterworth, the Georgetown Festival, where it have gained a lot of attention from the global. We bring the high talent and world-class art and culture scene to Georgetown to be to help to activate the pulse of the city. And after we delivered the grants, we did an assessment to see the impact, and then we can see the grant have able to not just able to restore the building, but also provide opportunity for the provide opportunity for the employments, and also restore the co-investments. So we have a combination of Think City grants, and also individual or organization who receive the grant also invest to ensure we have ownership from both parties. And then after the success of the grants, we use that momentum and impact to prepare the strategic master plan, how we can look beyond the grants to also improve the public land, and also looking at the programming as a proper system in the cities. For example, this is the Armenian Parks. Before, it just become a flea market during the weekend. Of course, it's a lot of people we have here, but most of the time, it's just an empty place. So it's not inclusive, and it's not reveal its true potential. So along the process, it's not just improving the physical of the parks, but also a lot of small little things that we do, continuous engagement with the community to ensure this park be co-owned by the community as well. Because we believe at the power of small, where small little things, if we combine together, it will create a big impact. Besides looking at the physical transformation, we also do the programming in the park to ensure the activations of the space. But of course, during this pandemics crisis, the park still used by the public, but there's there's no event-based or gathering mass in this place. We also do the assessment, because we believe at the evidence base. We do the before and after, how the revitalized of the park has been impact to the community, and we have a good feedback in terms of perception of the user and residents to the park. And after that, we also document our knowledge and codify it properly. So those learning experience that we gain from this study, and any study that we do, actually, we see how we can replicate and scale up to the other area as well. So in terms of, because we have the fundamental principle, but in terms of approaching in a different place, it need to adapt accordingly. The park actually is one of the small area here, but it's actually looking at, it's become a catalyst where it's able to it's able to trigger other public improvement in the surrounding, like laneway, facade restorations, and the owner of the building start realize the potential of asset. So it is important not just to change the physical, but also how we change the behavior of and mindset toward the place. And also after our effort in Georgetown, it start recognized by the global and local as well. So the Georgetown now have become one of the most best cities in the world by the Lonely Planet. And to ensure the continuous and sustainable effort being kept, we have collaborate with the state government, Agaha Trust for Culture, and Think City to form the GTCDC, which called the Georgetown Conservation and Development Corporation, to look after this kind of initiative that we have started in Georgetown. And also we have go beyond the global to have MOU also with the UN Habitat. This one, for example, we look on how we can go to the climate change, not just looking at the conservation addressing, but also how we tap into the resilient component, which looking at the climate. This one is more complex because like the first speaker, Mika mentioned, we need a diverse collaboration between the different stakeholders to ensure the success and resilient in terms of a project itself. And while we're doing our works in Georgetown, we start expanding our wing to other city. For example, in Batu as a secondary city, Kuala Lumpur, the Malaysian capital city, and Johor Bahru as a border city. Of course, each of city have their different challenge. And before we come in, we will start with the baseline study to understand first the context of the place before we come out with the strategy and refine forming the grants that to tackle those kind of issue. And after 10 years, Think City, we have delivered a good impact. For example, here we have every $1 spent by Think City, we're able to generate co-investment $3 in total. We also have a lot of total economic value in terms of grants, also recognized and receive some awards from the local and international agency. And then to ensure what we're doing here is resilient, and we want to start catalyze the movement in city making, we have established the institute and collaborate with the different agency, basically to ensure the knowledge that we have here is able to be able to transfer to others as well. And after 10 years also, the urban regeneration and city making have become something mainstream in Malaysia. Not just the city that Think City have been come, but also other city in Malaysia, they have realized the importance and see the potential of the culture-based economy as engine for to drive the cities. And perhaps the key takeaways from this lesson is first, resilient, we will require the local empowerment. So here, how we can help the local community to be part of this initiative, or they themselves champion this kind of effort, like the Minjung say, one individual is able to do everything as long he has passion, because I believe that guy have a strong passionate about his community. That's why he's able to do something that very extraordinary for this in that place. And then second is community is more than just people. It's also about the combination of individuals, group, and stakeholders from diverse background and interests. So when we look at definition, it's not just about the people. And every city is unique, although the fundamental is same, but it must to adapt accordingly to the context. And before I end my presentation, I'd like to share a quick video on Think City. Just a quick one, like 3 minutes.
Yes, Ridwan, the 2 minutes, right? The video?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Actually, we can't hear voice, but it's okay.
Oh,
yes.
You can't hear voice?
We can't hear the sound, but it's okay. Yeah. I think we can leave the time for the questions and exchange. Okay. Yes. But we can also, like this video can be uploaded later to the website and we can revisit it. Yes.
Thank
Yes. And there are several questions. And one is about the gentrification. On this is to Think City. The gentrification issues with this placemaking projects and what are the solutions to it. Because quite a lot of projects that Rudan you're doing is the historical sites and also existing communities. And how do you deal with this issue of gentrification? Yes.
Gentrification can be happen in any level actually, but how we can reduce actually the impact of gentrification is by planting or start breeding the sense of ownership to the community. That's why we always start with the grants, for example, to help the community to actually be part of the initiative. But we understand that some of the grants, for example, is need to tailor accordingly to the place. For example, the Johor Bahru, when we have a grant in Johor, it somehow focus on the grant filming. In Georgetown, it focus more on the heritage building, or because it's the priority there is about the building. But it's not just looking at the restoration of the building, but also looking at the content, how it will go, what is going to be used after. We also facilitating up until that stage. And for KL, for example, it's more about the content. So in KL, basically there's no very little population there. So what we do is we engaging surrounding stakeholder or community there, and how they can bring in their content in downtown KL. So yeah, gentrification can happen in any level. So how we can reduce is to start building the sense of ownership and sense place to the people.
Actually, Think City is doing, even though you mentioned started with small projects, but it's actually doing a lot of impactful, projects. And this cannot just rely on one body. And
True.
Yeah, not just one body, Think City.
Correct.
But so I would share this question with all the speakers, because our theme is how institutions and also the government can help build a healthy and resilient city. So from the Think City and also Professor Khan and also Mikam, later I would like to invite you to share on this, as a summary, how the institutions and also government can really collaborate and help to make it successful. But I have, let me check. There are some questions. So one question from Mikam is, do the hawkers return to the park, after the regeneration? And also this another question for Professor Khan is, the Li Jiang generate all the resources for the initiatives, or did he rely on the government? Any government support to him? Where's the resources come from? And there is another question. Has anyone experienced friction or dissatisfaction between communities, institutions, governments, and how have they been resolved? This is a good question. Nothing is like smooth as silk. There must be some challenges in between, and how do we overcome? Yes. And so I pass the time to Professor Khan, for this question, and also my overall general question. Yes, Professor?
Okay, yes, thank you for the question. I want to answer the second question about the resources of this Li Zhang first. He's under the governmental payroll because he's the neighborhood chief. So every month he's a public servant, you know. But interestingly, the director of Community Development Association is a volunteer. So they are different systems. But as a Li Zhang, as the neighborhood chief, he's been elected, I cannot remember for how many years, more than 20 years. He's been serving this position longer than I can remember. So of course, he would acquire different resources from the government. But he always mentioned about how he is capable of fundraising from different resources outside of the government, which I think is very interesting because of what he did, and he's also a very good storyteller, and he could talk to you like you're the buddy next door. You know, everybody is so in love with this chat with this Li Zhang, and so. Sometimes you work with the public transit office, and there's a lot of leftover. Sometimes they can recycle different materials for Li Zhang, and he worked with different supermarkets, different bakeries. Somehow, the food would be disposed after certain days. So before they became bad, they would send it to Li Zhang. So he also established a very interesting logistic system based on his own team. And so he covers basically everything. And now, at first I thought this is a very unique model and it's very difficult to replicate, but he explored his experiences to different neighborhoods now and establish different food banks and like the Huajia cafes. And so I don't know, I think he is now an entrepreneur in certain ways, but I think I believe his passion for his community. I agree with Ridwan's observation was the key to drive all the initiatives. But I'm also thinking that if his attitude toward the governmental resources or policies somehow is kind of negative. For instance, as I mentioned, this is also leads to another question about the frictions and dissatisfaction with the government. The city government wants to tear down South Airport apartments for new social housing, high-rise social housing. But for the very underprivileged, they couldn't even cross the threshold of social housing. It's going to be more expensive than what they pay now. So they have to negotiate with the government. And especially the first pilot project would be to tear down the elementary school. And the government think easily those students could be relocated to another school nearby. But it's not that easy. He knows all the sort of social tension in different elementary school. He knows that the students in Zhongyi Elementary School would be in trouble if they cannot go through certain smooth process of transition. Especially there's kind of discrimination in different elementary school just based on their economic and social status. So I think he acquired certain power of negotiation now because of what he did. So he could bargain with the government. And that is, well, the friction, but then again, negotiation is a part of this public process. I believe if you don't acquire enough sort of community power, it's more likely that you lose to the government if there's certain top-down policy coming over from directly the municipal government, and some of the communities couldn't even resist those policies and implementations. Okay.
The same question, similar question from Sujata to Think City, and I have asked the same question at the beginning to Rida. That is funding. Where is the funding from for Think City, and also how do you mobilize so many people, to work on this placemaking projects? And like, is it a semi-government body, and how do you sustain, this from small projects at the beginning, then to much bigger projects later? Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the question, and Sujata. Previously, we received the grants from the government, but then it's need to understand that grant is just a tools to help the community, but to empower community is not just rely on the grants. For example, here, if the community have idea or they have started in initiative, how Think City, for example, as a facilitator, able to help or connect them with the government or connect them with the other stakeholder who do the similar thing, so that the agglomeration of the idea or the effort will be bigger. So of course, I understand that funding will be issue for anyone who do the project, but we shouldn't see the grants as the must thing have to do to ensure its success, because I believe the crowdsource of the funding also is very important. That's why in any grants that provided by Think City, we never give 100%. We need everyone and whoever the applicant able to get, to ensure everyone has their own attachment to the project. And then maybe just a quick answer for the about the friction between the community and the government. Of course, we have this dealing with this issue many times. The issue mainly because community and government, they have different expectations from one another. But when we bring them together and understand what they can do, what they can't, and then understanding because sometimes they might thought the issue is under that agency, but actually it's not. So by understanding and have a common term on certain issue, and but towards make the place alive, it helped the conservation to become a more positive to that.
So with Mikam, you have something to share about the friction.
Like in Hong Kong, we also have a lot of projects where we can see friction or conflicts between the government's proposal and what the community wants. So a project which eventually won the highest level of award from UNESCO is the Blue House. If you've been to Hong Kong, you probably, might have visited it. When it first started, the government really wanted to develop a Grade 1 building into a shopping mall and try to drive the residents out. And what happened, was that the community tried to seek, a local charity organization for help. And this charity organization, because of its connections, tried to help the local community to organize. We call this, bridging social capital. But more importantly, and because of this charity, which has been serving the area for over 5 decades, they also have connections with the government, what we call the linking social capital. And as a result of this, vertical and horizontal collaboration, the people got they want, eventually with the good view of the government turning the building into a project for heritage, partnership conservation, and the building, itself is saved, but then the community inside, is conserved, and also with the help of different stakeholders is turned into almost like, a hub for bringing in new residents in a good neighbor scheme so that they can actually help to connect the people and work together. And it's a heavily gentrified area. And so in a way that projects served as a place for rebuilding a highly gentrified, community. So we do have that kind of story as well. And because that project, is really done, in a very nice way, and so they got the highest award from UNESCO.
Mikem, I also invite you to answer the question, like, what's the role of the government? And I hear that institutions can be instrumental also in solving the conflicts and the frictions and making the project, continue and be realized. So the COVID-19 brings us new insights and also urges us for some change. So how do you see the government's role and also the institution's role in this? Yes. Back to COVID. Yeah.
Well, I think, of course, the government and the institutional setup always remind people that the institution is not just the hard institution, but also the soft ones, are very important. But of course, like in our situation, unlike in Taiwan, our government is what they call themselves an executive-led government mode of governance. So they actually control the resources. And so it's actually very important for them to try to listen and also to try to understand, people's needs. But since we are not a democratic system, it's up to individual government officials to tackle the situation. Very often those who are more ready to listen and try to work around with the institutional setup, then the issue might be resolved in a more satisfactory manner, like the Blue House in a sense. But if they stick to the book and given such a hard, institutional setup, it might be sometimes create a lot of unnecessary conflicts. We do have a situation, if you still remember, in Choyun village. So basically the village had to be scrapped. If not because of the resilience of the community, we won't have the new Choyun village. But that was like, the government did very little to really support the rebuilding of the village. So I think it depends really, like I think Ridwan mentioned that each city is unique. Each mode of governance, is unique. Across the board, if you look at a new urban agenda, governments, we have high expectation on the government because of its, resources and all, the kind of like power embedded in regulations and laws. But in reality, it really depends on, how that particular, government function.
Okay, I will give the 1 minute to Ridan and also to Professor Khan, like concluding statement, after hearing the other speakers. Yes. Like Professor Khan,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, me first. Okay. We've been talking about participatory planning for so long. Sometimes even the language of participatory planning is defunct for me. So recently, because of different cases that I've been involved, I know the problem with the government, and a simple issue is about a mode of communication. And what we try to replace the participatory planning with, dialogical planning is based on the mutual knowledge sharing. For instance, the government always possess certain professional knowledge, like in planning and design. It's totally unfamiliar for general citizens, and they show the maps without telling them what it's about. And the local community, they do have sort of local knowledge, but the government didn't spend enough time to do the field work, to acquire local knowledge. So there's a gap between local knowledge and professional knowledge. And what I'm talking about is when we actually try the other mode of planning, the dialogical planning, is to encourage the community to have a better understanding of the professional knowledge. Like the project of Shizi Island, the people living there, 11,000 people, they didn't know they will be wiped out just by a single plan until recently they self-organized as a self-help group, and they started to know more about planning and what about, you know, zone expropriation and what they would do to their living in the future. So eventually they know more about this professional knowledge. They have certain skill in negotiation. And so vice versa, I think the government should be more aware of the local knowledge, and they should be more involved in the community empowerment process or the direct dialogue with the community members and field works. I think that's very important.
Yes, Professor, thank you. Seems like I need a connector or a translator, you know, in between government and the community, like what Think City, you know, has achieved. So I will give the time to Ridan, your last like 1 minute. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Corinne. We believe that the earlier we do the engagement, the more buy-in we will get, and then best always to get government, or in this context or local authority, to be part of the discussion even in the beginning of the project. So just to answer, for example, when the Naima asking how we integrate the UNESCO guideline. For example, here when we do any plan, for example, in Kuala Lumpur, where we do the strategic master plan of KL Creative and Culture District, we do the MOU with local authority and other agency. And from there, we work together and understand the scope, collect the evidence base, work with the community, use the momentum that we have collected from the grant and our experience working with the community on the ground for the last few years. And then from there, we build the strong strategic master plan. And then after the master plan has been finished, we see how the master plan can be fit into the legislative future planning of the city itself. So it not just it's not going to be the separate document, but also be part of the future document under regulated plan that will be gazetted by the government. So beside the evidence base, I believe all the idea or the future planning, for example, need to be also included in line with the policies.
Thank you. Thank you again to all the speakers. Mikam, you have anything to share? Mikam, you have anything to share? No? Okay. Thanks to Mikam and also Professor Khan and Ridan. We are a little bit overrun, not little bit. But the discussion can continue because this is the opportunity and also the challenge for us to build a better place on this planet, not just for people, but also for other beings. And I think this opportunity of sharing, you know, our experience, how or mistakes that we have made will help each other, you know, to grow. And last but not the least, I think collaboration is really important with everybody. This challenge is to everyone, the government, professionals, communities. Only collaborations and we work together can build a better place. So I pass this time to Steph. She's going to tell us about the next session. Yes.
Thank you,
Beth.
Corinne.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you all of the speakers for the inspiring presentation and insights. I just want to give a heads up to the next session of our symposium. So in a little bit less than 2 hours, we will have our next session on what is always a very popular session on innovative approaches and creative practices. So we'll be looking at how artists or even like common people, everyday creativity deal with and response to the pandemic and how they have used their creativity under such circumstances. We'll be having speakers from Australia, Netherlands, and Singapore. And that's going to be in at 5:15 p.m. At Hong Kong time. I placed the link of our website in the chat box. So if you want to check out that session, if you want to sign up to any other sessions for the rest of the day and for tomorrow, you can check out at the website and just click the sign up button and you'll receive a Zoom link immediately. So that's all for my side, and see if Hendrik, you want to add anything else.
No, thanks so much to all speakers and to Corinne, our moderator. So I was very happy that you were there, and also with your particular role in IA and in the community here. And I hope we can continue to explore opportunities with also all our guests. And I was very happy to hear from Think City, Ming Jae, and me. Anyway, we worked together for a while, and I'm very pleased to hear about your description, how really this process worked. There were some very useful diagrams, I think, for me to understand how different levels intersect. And also thanks to Mikem and the entire team. So we see each other again 5:15.
Okay, so I was I don't know whether I can ask this question
Sure.
because I understand, Ming Jae, hours, you are now are you heading hours now? Like hours has been like here for so long, and it's actually like a precursor, I would say, you know, for an organization like Think City. And I don't know, you know, the current role of ours and how would you see Think City, like, you know, because I think ours is like how many decades ahead of Think City, and then you guys are so much ahead of Hong Kong. I think, I mean, like Hendrik asked, why don't we have a Think City? You know, so what can we learn from all this? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the chair of ours. I'm the what they call supervisor. You know, I used to chair, but then 2 years ago I stepped down. But anyway, briefly, ours is it stands for Organization of Urban. Anything start with RE. You know, regeneration, revolution, revitalization, what have you. But because we focus more and more on housing in the past 5 years, especially to drive the legalization of social housing in Taiwan is a very important step. But then we noticed that, you know, after the government built certain projects, then the management of everyday life in social housing is another issue. Very often you'll see it's very almost like a corporate management of a particular housing. People are still waiting to be managed instead of thinking themselves as an entity that could manage the housing by themselves. So we started to innovate a different system into social housing, including to combine co-housing and social housing in certain clusters. And so certain people who could write up their proposals instead of waiting in line, you know, to draw the luck, they could send their proposal to the government. And after the reviews, I was one of the reviewers, and you would know these people in the community, in the public housing community, could do much better than just being a resident. So those things started to trigger different approaches, including like person for art, public art in public housing. And that would be interesting as well, because very few cities in the world actually have person for art in public housing. And so we've been exploring different sides of it. So we actually, I'm not sure if we could have like a model of something, but we are trying to transform ourselves into a cooperative. And it's difficult to maintain as just an association. So very likely we'll welcome you to join our co-housing in the future. I don't know. YC Chen is now in Taiwan, helping to build a co-housing project. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
I think maybe we make a certain kind of rest time for everyone because we are all a long time on Zoom. But I think this was still a very good addition from Ming-Jae, because I think really to understand the institutional setup that allows those projects. So thanks again to everyone, and maybe we see some of you, or you might join some of the later sessions. Okay.
Okay.
Bye. 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 And
Bye.
also
Thank you.
thank
Bye. Thank you. Bye,
Andy
guys.
to join us. Okay. Bye. Bye.